Welcome again, dear students. I am Dr. Kaleem Ahmed, Assistant Professor, Department of Wildlife Sciences, Aligarh Muslim University, Aligarh. Now, in today's lecture, we are going to start some interesting topic that is related to sampling methods regarding the different taxa for the conservation of the biodiversity. So, we can say these methods are essential for estimating biodiversity, or we can say for estimating the animal population and understanding the, we can say, the distributions and the density of the different taxa for their management, for their conservations. So let's, we can say, dive into why these methods for biodiversity conservations are used, and what are the assumptions they rely on, and the pros and the cons of each of these methods. As we already know that animal population studies are crucial for conservation and management, as they help track the species over time. So we can say understanding the distribution and density of the different animal populations provide us some kind of the insight into the habitat health of that particular species, and also provide the biodiversity of that particular species in which we actually census, or in which we can estimate the populations. The two primary methods that actually use for the biodiversity data collections or we can say are census and the sampling. We can say through these methods we can actually monitor population trends and also understand the change in population communities over the time. So these information that we actually get from census or the samplings provide us some kind of the vital informations that are actually very essential, very important for conservation strategies, and also identifying, help us, we can say, to identifying the areas that need some kind of the protection or the management. So let's try to find out what's actually the census is or what actually the sampling is. So a census actually involves a complete count of all the individuals in a particular area or a specific area, or we can say in a particular population. So in contrast, if you can say about the sampling, sampling is some kind of, we can say, estimate the population size based on the data from a subset or representative samples. So we can say census methods actually work best in small that actually area contain very small populations where counting of each and every individual is possible. Like we can say a small population residing in islands and we are able to count each and every individuals in that particular area, then census is the best methods. On the other hand, we can say sampling is better suited for large or more open habitats where full counts are actually impractical, or it is not possible to count each and every individuals of the population. So we can say both methods provide valuable information and help ecologists, biologists to assess the population of a species over time. So what are the key difference between the, we can say, census and the sampling? Census methods cover the entire population that I have already discussed with you, make them comprehensive and accurate. We can say on the other hand, sampling method on the other hand use a representative samples which is faster but introduce some estimation error. Census methods are often time intensive and require substantial resources. Sampling will, while faster and less costly, provide estimates rather than exact counts. Census is suitable for, we can say, smaller areas or specific populations, while sampling is ideal for vast or we can say challenging environment. We can say why we actually perform the census. A census provides a detailed and highly accurate data on population size and the distributions, but there is always a limitations. It's not like that the census actually provides some kind of the, accurate data on that. If it's feasible, it provides accurate data only if it is area is small, it contains a small group of the population, and the species are also endangered and isolated in a particular islands or reserves. So census method is reliable because it lacks the estimation errors that come with samplings. It's practically useful, we can say, in control of the closed systems such as fenced reserves, where population movement is actually limited and we are able to count each and every individuals. Census method is critical for tracking each individuals in endangered populations, helping prioritize conservation efforts. Just like we have some endangered populations which is very small in size and also isolated in a small pockets, then we can use the census and try to get the accurate figure of entire population, and then we can do the management interventions accordingly. On the other hand, we can say sampling is more efficient for large areas or spread out populations where a full census is actually impractical. It's not possible to count each and every individuals. It requires, we can say, fewer resources, less time, fewer personals, making it ideal for the studies with limited budgets. So we can say sampling also allows us to estimate the population sizes over vast areas like national parks or large forests. Just like we are large population area is a 1000 square kilometers, just like we have many sanctuaries, many national parks and the wildlife sanctuaries which are we can say more than 500 square kilometers. So it's not possible in that particular areas to count each and every individuals. So then we can comes to a method called sampling. We can take a representative of each population, and then we can estimate the density or the abundance of the populations. So we can say it's also effective for the species that are highly mobile, just like tigers, which have a home range of more than 100 square kilometers. So for that particular population, the census is not possible. So we can go for sampling for that, such as migratory birds. So we can't do the census for that. And we can say, just like we can say carnivores, different carnivore species, they are also very mobile, have a very large home range. The deer species, which are in these things, we can say in these, for these species, it's very, very challenging to do the, we can say, census. Then we go for the sampling method. Sampling is also flexible, and we can say also it's a scalable methods, providing enough data, more data for effective monitoring as well as the managements. But the limitation is that the sampling should be of the sampling should be according to the, we can say, the species in which we are going to study. We can say certain assumptions of the, we can say, sampling actually relies on certain assumptions, and then only we can actually get the accurate data through sampling methods. First, the sampling area should representative the large populations. That's very, very important, meaning it reflects the same diversity and the density of the entire area. It's not like that we have chosen a small areas of the entire area and then we estimate, do the sampling, and then we can represent that this is the density of the whole population, or this is the density abundance of the whole population. It should be representative of the larger populations. Another is, second, population should be evenly distributed across the landscape or have a predictable distribution patterns. Then only we can actually do the samplings. The third is, we can say, deduction rate must be constant, ensuring that the visibility or the habitat conditions do not affect the results. That's also very, very important. So another, we can say, observer impacts on the animal behavior should be minimal. Otherwise it could be, we can get some kind of the skewed results or some kinds of results which are not actually represent the actual populations. So these assumptions are, we can say, very, very essential for generating some kind of reliable estimates from the sampling data. So if we talk about, we can say, as how I discussed with you in the previous few slides regarding the census and the samplings. So let's start from the today's lecture. We actually start with which method we actually use for the sampling the bird population, which is very, very important component of the biodiversity, because a large number of the ecosystem services is actually dependent upon the birds, and birds play a very, very crucial roles in the ecosystem, running of the ecosystems. So for birds, we can use the different census methods, like we can say call count, we can say use the total count, we can also use the roast counts. So let's look at the census. Census are, we can say, applicable only in certain condition in these for bird species, where we are reasonably actually sure that we will not missing any of the bird species. And in that situation, we might, or when you have got a lot of, just take an example that in a, we can say, small wetland, we have a large lake, we have a waterfalls, and we are sure that we are not going to miss any of the duck, any of the water bird species in that particular area. Just like we are standing on a watchtower and we can see each and every flock in that particular island, and then we can actually go for the census of birds in the water birds. And census are actually particularly used for, we can say, waterfalls in the lakes and in different wetlands. And we can say another, we can say, method that we actually use for the birds in case of, we can say, total count is roost counts. So just like we have some bird species like manas and the different crows that actually coming together to roost in the evenings in a same platform and the same tree, and before they go to the sleep, and we can reasonably show that we are not going to miss too many individuals on that roost, and then we can actually go for the this roost cones in that particular areas. And finally, we have, we can say, call cones, because bird species are very very vocals. So let's suppose that we are actually in a habitat, and we are and large number of the birds actually calling in that particular areas, and we are able to hear the calls of each and every birds, with the assumption that each and every the species which are actually going to core count in or we can say calling at that period of times, and we are actually able to hear the sounds also. So if the assumption is that if that species are not actually calling, some individuals are not calling, we actually miss, we can say, some individuals. So we can say the limitations that the census have already discussed with you, and census are not used very often, we can say, in ecological research, because they do suffer from some kind of the limitation that I have already discussed with you. So there are various, we can say, sampling methods for the monitoring of the birds, because today we are actually going to discuss the which sampling methods we actually will use for the birds. So line transect and the point counts are the most, we can say, widely used and most common used methods for the sampling of the bird species. So line transects are, we can say, generally more effective in open habitats where actually observers can follow a straight line, because one of the assumption of the we can say line transects is we have to maintain the straight lines. So on the other hand, the point count, where whoever are better suited, or we can lay the point count in that particular areas where there is a vegetation is very very dense, and we are remaining stationary, reduce the disturbance in that particular areas, which actually use the point counts. Both methods, we can say, involves observers within a set boundaries, which help in estimate the population density of the bird species. So choice of these methods, and which method is going to be used for the sampling of the birds, whether line transect or whether point counts, is dependent upon the habitat types, bird behaviors, and the research objectives. So on that basis, we actually choose whether we will go for the line transect or whether we will go for the point count. So for sampling birds or for census, we need these kind of the equipments. We need some range finders, we need a binocular, we need a compass, we need a distance software, and then we also use we can say, because R and distance are now integrated to analyze further the data. So these are the things that are actually required in line transect and point count samplings. So let's start from line transect methods. In line transect methods, actually observers actually walk a defined line in a particular areas, and record each and every birds that actually they see, or that actually they heard on either sides, on both sides of that particular transects. And this method is, we can say, commonly used in open areas where we can able to see at a maximum distance, like grasslands, apiaries, or along the coastal zones. So observer may also note the distance of the birds, because for analysis in the distance software, we need the distance of the birds from the line to calculate the density more accurately. Line transects, we can say, are effective, very very effective for estimating bird density and abundance, especially in those habitats which have very good visibility. So this method allows for covering large areas while collecting valuable data on the bird distributions. So as you can see in this particular lines, that this is the line transect lines, and maybe this distance, maybe we can use the line transects as a fixed or open width. Just like in this particular case, we have a line transect of 500 meters, and we have fixed the distance at the 10 meter on either sides, and we have assumed that we are not going to count the bird species beyond 10 meters. So this is an example, imaginary examples. So in whatever the bird species we actually going to see on either sides, whether it's the 5 meter distance, whether it's a 10 meter distance, whether it's a 8 meter distance, we actually take the note down the bird species as well as the distance from the line to the birds first detected. We also need to note down, because it helps to calculate the density in a more accurate way. This is how we can see in this particular diagrams, you can see gridded maps for the establishment of the 50-meter nests. We can also use, we can say, this particular census, this sampling of line transects to count the nest in a particular colony. But just like we have an habitats and we have gridded the entire habitats, and in each grids, maybe the grid may be dependent upon our research objective or the species in question. So we can actually divide the entire area into grids, and then each grid we actually lay down the transects, and we have fixed the things that on either sides we create the buffer of the 5 meter, and on either side of the lines we can actually count all the nest that actually we can see in that particular area, and then we can also calculate the density of the nest in that particular areas. So this similar we can also use for the moving birds also, and we can also use it for the nest density calculations. So how we can actually conduct the line transects? As you can see, observers follow, I have already discussed with you, follow some kind of the straight line through a habitat such as trail, through a meadow. Birds, whatever the birds actually seen or heard within a certain distance that I have already discussed with you from the line, are recorded along with the distance information if feasible. Then we can say also transects often repeated multiple times once, and more replicates we can do on a particular transects, more accurate data we actually get from that particular areas also. So it increase some kind of the accuracy in that we can say when we can do the replicates in that transects. So data collected along these transects actually helps the estimate in density, and can be adjusted for deduction probability also. The transect lengths and the survey width vary based on the habitat type and the survey objectives, ensuring accurate data. So this is another examples of that. That let's suppose we have we are moving. This is a straight line in which we are actually we laid the transect in a particular areas, and then actually if we are moving here, we have seen some particular bird species on the lines. The distance will be then 0. Some bird species we have actually seen here, some seen here. Maybe a distance may be vary. Some species seen at the 10 meter, 20 meter, 30 meter. We need to count each and every species on this particular water from where it actually has been seen, and we also need to note down the distance from the line when the birds actually sighted. The distribution of the transect should be random, so that it's a representation of the whole area. Just like you can see these red marks, you can see that these are the transects that actually laid down, and the distribution is, you can see, is more random, not a clump distributions. Because then if we can do this, then only we can actually find out the accurate results, and we can also find out some kind of, you can say, reliable data from the transects. Some assumptions of the, we can say, line transect methods are comes with also some assumptions. First, all birds on the lines are detected, that have already discussed, which is very critical for the density estimation calculations. Another is deduction probability increase with the distance, and so birds further from the lines are less likely to be seen. This is another options. Another is birds are assumed to be stationary or move predictably during observations, reducing double counting. Another we can say is observer movement should not overlay or disturb the birds, as we can say disturbance could affect deduction rates. So we need to care about all these things, and we should not walk in such a way that it actually disturb the birds. Then we actually not able to get the reliable results. Some of the advantages of, we can say, line transect methods are are highly efficient for the open habitat that I have already discussed with you. This method also actually allows us to coverage the, we can say, very large landscapes. Another is by recording detection distance, researcher can also estimate the bird density, and it's also adaptable for the different species and the habitat types such as grassland and the savannas. And line transects are also especially useful for studying large scale distribution patterns across open habitats. And the certain limitations of the line transect methods are they are less effective in dense habitats. Then we can use the point count methods. Deductions, we can say that detecting small and distant birds in dense vegetation can be challenging. And observer movement may also disturb, we can say, or flush the bird species, because actually we are constantly moving on the lines. There is some limitation that our moving can also disturb the bird species. Estimating, we can say, distance accurately requires some kind of the experience and the training, especially for the distant birds. So if birds are highly mobile such as swallows, transect data may be less reliable due to their movements. Another method that actually we can use for the bird sampling is point counts. So observers, in this case, what happened, the observers actually remain stationary at a predefined points, and then actually records whatever the bird species they actually heard or see. That's you can see here. The observers is actually have some kind of the remain stationary here. we can say, and then they actually count all the bird species, whatever the distance they actually they define, that whether it's a 10 meter or 20 meters or 30 meter, or whether it's a open width distance. So accordingly, if it is a 10 meter or 20 meter distance, whatever the bird species which have been seen in this 20-meter distance, they need to note down, and also need to note down the distance from this particular point to the birds first detected. So this method is commonly used in, we can say, dense or varied habitat like forest, where visibility is very limited, and it is not possible to detect the bird species beyond certain distance. Just like vegetation is very dense, we are not able to see the bird species more after 20 meters. Then we can use this fixed width radius of point counts, and every bird species within that 20-meter radius will be counted, and the distance from the observers will also be note downs. Observers actually note downs birds with a fixed radius. I have already talked about you. Point counts actually minimize some kind of the disturbance and also allow the observers to accurately observe the bird presence. And this data from the point counts help estimate population density as well as the species diversity. And how point counts are conducted? Observers, I already discussed with you, observers stand at a fixed location, record all the bird species, and counts typically how much time we will need to take to stay at what particular times. We need to stay 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or 50 minutes, and this will be dependent upon the area as well as the diversity in that particular areas. So points are spaced, we can say how much the distance will be the two different points. It may be spaced systematically or randomly, maybe 200 meter, one points at distance of 200 meter, and it's also cover the entire area. It should be the representative of the entire area in which actually we are going to do the point count samplings. Observations are repeatedly across different times of the seasons. For comprehensive data, we need to conduct the samplings in the winter, summers, and the monsoons, so we can get some kind of the comparative data and which species actually occupying which particular habitats in the different seasons of the years. So this method is practically effective in habitats where mobility is restricted. And certain assumptions of, we can say, point count method is, point count assume that all birds within the radius are detected during the observation periods. So this is basic assumptions. Whatever the bird species are present in which we actually we are conducting the point counts, all the bird species within that particular radius is going to be detected. Birds are assumed to stay within the count area to avoid overcountings. That's another assumption of that. That it's not like the one bird species you have counted, it's fly away and then it's come again, and then you count it double as the same bird species. So another assumption is that, and deduction rates should be constant across observers to ensure some kind of the reliability in the data, and observation time should be sufficient to record all the species present. It's not like that. That's already talk about you, that the observation times, whether it's a time we will stay on one particular time point at 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 50 minutes, it should be a representative that all the bird species that are present in that particular radius should be counted. And observers' presence should not significantly alter the bird behavior, as disturbance can skew the data, and that's why the researcher, when actually laid down the point counts, they give some kind of, we can say, start the sampling in point counts after 5 minutes, so or 2 minutes or 1 minute, so that the birds actually adjust the observers' movement in that particular point. Another, what are the advantages? Point counts are ideal for dense habitat. I already discussed with you. There are minimum movements by the observers, because movement is very less, so there is less chance that birds actually scare. It's very effective for the species with smaller territories that may remain within a view. So point counts are flexible. More flexible land can be used across various types of the habitats, even for the forests or in the wetlands also. So this method is practically good for detecting those species which are very less visible, or which are vocal species also. And point counts also come with some kind of the limitations. Point counts are limited to birds detection within a specific radius, potentially missing distant individuals, because we are actually counting the bird species within a predefined radius. Maybe it's a 10 meter or 20 meters. So birds actually with a behind 20 meter radius are not going to be come in our samplings. So detection radius can vary by the observer's skills, affecting data consistency. There is another things, because every observers have its own skills collecting data. So it's also, we can say, have some kind of, we can say, affect the data consistency. So time constraint may also lead to misdetection, especially for the less active species, because if whether we are going to stay in a one particular point for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, also we can, some kind of the constraint is also there. So point codes are also less effective in open areas, because then we can use the line transect where birds are widely spaced. It's not, you cannot find the bird species in open areas in one particular localized areas, and then we can't do this kind of the samplings. So identifying multiple vocalizations simultaneously is also challenging in dense habitats. So that's another limitation of, we can say, point code methods. So a lot of, we can say, voice, a lot of songs, a lot of things you can hear in one point, and it's very, very difficult for the observers to differentiate the voice of a different species and uh, count, or we can say identify each and every species and note down. And choosing between the line transect and the point cones habitat, we can say, I already discussed with you the key to choose whether it's a line transect or the, we can say, or point cones. For dense, we can habitat, we can favor the point cones, and the open we actually use the line transects. Is also depend upon the, we can say, if you are walking in the, we can, some kind of the Himalayas, where the difficult terrain is there, you can't do the line transaction there, then you can, point cone method is more feasible in Himalayas also. And bird behaviors also matter. For instance, we can say stationary species are suited to point cones, while the mobile species, for mobile species we can fit the line transects. So available sources such as times and the observer skills influence the choice of the methods also, and survey goals and habitat conditions also actually tell us which method we actually best use for the samplings, and both methods can combine to gain a comprehensive understanding of the bird populations. So dear students, with this we end today's lectures, and we will continue in this particular week that how we can actually, what are the different methods for sampling mammals, what are the plot and plotter sampling techniques, and we are also going to discuss in the coming weeks regarding how we can actually prepare the herbariums. That is also very, very important for the biodiversity conservations. Hope you will enjoy this particular lectures and in the coming lectures also. Thank you dear students.